Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great night out there. So yeah, tonight we're going to be checking out the Acustica Audio Frost plugin, channel strip plugin that just dropped today. I'm a big channel strip fan. It's a big part of my workflow, so I'm always really excited when a new channel strip comes out, and I'm definitely always interested with what Acustica Audio is putting out, and Acustica Audio's putting out so many plugins. I kind of feel like they must just have like this, magical factory of plugin elves just making plugins all the time. There seems to be a lot coming out from there. This Frost plugin is on their new Hyper engine, from Acustica Audio, which is really exciting. I've tried out the Firebus Plus compressor plugin, which is on the new Hyper engine, and I think the Hyper engine is really exciting for Acustica Audio, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it implemented into all of their plugins. Acustica Audio, they make incredible sounding plugins. They do a phenomenal job of bringing the analog world into the digital world. They make exceptional sounding emulations. So yeah, sonic quality is not their problem. The problem generally with Acustica Audio is their CPU usage, on their plugins, and the functionality of their plugins. They're pretty power hungry, so it's hard to run more than a few in a session unless you have some sort of super beast of a computer. And the handling of them, the functionality of them is also a little bit hard to work around. There's a lot of input lag on their plugins, a lot of read and react time. So it's hard to use their plugins quickly and efficiently and know that you're hearing it in real time. But because the plugins sound so good, it kind of surpasses all of the functional issues. But this is something that they're obviously addressing with this new Hyper engine, and even with every iteration of their plugin that comes out, and they're constantly updating their plugins. Performance is always improving. So I'm excited to try this out. There's a lot in this channel strip. We've got EQ, we've got a preamp with saturation, clipping, and we've also got a compressor, which has got 2 brick wall limiters and a dynamic EQ. So there's a lot of ground to cover on this thing tonight. If you haven't been on the channel before, the whole purpose of the channel is for me to try this out in real time. I haven't heard this at all yet. I don't know how it sounds, so I'm trying it out with you folks and giving you my honest thoughts and opinions while I'm trying it out, while I'm working through it. I'm all about workflow. I'm all about digital workflow, trying to find things that are suitable for that workflow, that mesh really well with what I like to do. And I'm also just looking for things that just sound incredible or just really fun to use. Along with checking out software all the time and playing with plugins, I kind of have my own little nerdy plugin checklist that I like to go through. So the first thing on the checklist is the user interface. How does this thing look? Acustica puts a lot of time and effort into their UIs. They're always quite stunning. Lots of times it feels like they're a bit of a work of art, which is great. Sometimes I feel like their user interfaces are a little bit busy, and I do feel like sometimes their plugins are a little bit busy. They're just a little convoluted. This doesn't look this way at all. This looks pretty straightforward. It looks really slick, and it looks pretty simplified and intuitive to use, which again, I don't feel like is the case with a lot of their plugins. I like all of this. The user interface looks great. And can we resize it? And this is something that they've been adding to their plugins recently. We can resize the plugin, but unfortunately, it doesn't take effect until you make the plugin inactive and reactivate it. So you actually have to make it inactive, reactivate it, and that's just, what are we on here? And it doesn't tell us which one we're on. So I don't know if we're on 1.5. That's got to be the 2, right? That's the 1.5. My goodness, what is the 2? We're going to be inside the plugin. Yeah, okay. So we can resize it. It seems like maybe it's built for people that are working on massive screens or something. It's great that the resizing feature is there. Not a really useful resize to me. This plugin is already quite big. I don't need it to get bigger. I actually need to get it smaller. AB and undo and redo. None of those options are available to us. I always love AB and undo. Makes work quick, fun, easy, and you can leave yourself breadcrumbs while you're running around a mix, or you're running around a master. Mix knob, I see that we have a mix knob over in the compressor here. That's great. Meters, we got lots of meters on this thing, which is great. We've got EQ out, we've got gain reduction here, and we have input and output. And what I really like about the input and output is they're really close together. So I don't have to look far left, look far right, and try and figure out if they're on the same level. I can easily see right in front of me where they're at, and we both have a peak and RMS meter on the input and the output. Great, incredible. Do we have gain match? I love auto gain. I really wish it was on every plugin. I don't see any auto gain here. I see a makeup on the compressor, and I see just an output knob here. No auto gain. So I would love auto gain. I think auto gain's a great feature on plugins. Oh, latency. I always forget about latency. This thing, I mean, this is also the thing about acoustic audio plugins. It's kind of the thing, they're always very heavily latent. So hard to use in production. And the interesting thing is that they do have zero latency versions of their plugins, but those actually take up more processing power than the standard version. So there's a big trade-off to try and use this as zero latency versions. So yeah, 5,048 samples is no small amount of latency. So pretty latent, but that's always the case. Let's hop over to the manual. Okay, so Frost, they generally put a lot into their manuals. As I said, some of them are epic and complicated and confusing, hard to get a lot of really quick information out of them. It seems like they're addressing that as well in their manuals, which is great. So it is one of the Acustica's most versatile and creative plugins, able to take on just about any job, made up of different precious tools used and appreciated by worldwide pro audio engineers and carefully selected by Acustica to create the ultimate all-in-one channel strip. So this isn't emulating one thing, this is emulating many. This plugin is so precisely controllable and so versatile, and its sonic characters so configurable that it really isn't limited to specific genres or tasks, ranging from ultra clean to warm, musical, aggressive to chilled out. It's all about supporting your choices and needs. So lots of versatility was kept in mind for this, which is great. So what about the EQ? So a sand style EQ. So this is one thing that I find really confusing about Acustica is they have wild plugin names that are emulating hardware, and it's up to you to try and figure out what hardware they're emulating, because they're not officially licensed, and that's okay, but there's lots of ways to give us a bit more of an indication as to what they're actually emulating. So Sandstyle, that's their SSL emulation, so the EQ is emulating an SSL EQ. We have a Sandstyle bus compressor, VCA bus compressor, so SSL style bus compressor is the compression, and the preamp and saturation stage with oversampling rates derived from a tube Varimute compressor. So very interesting. So Brickwall 1, first Frankenstein brickwall limiter by Acustica. Brickwall 2, second Frankenstein brickwall limiter by Acustica, is traditionally characterized by Tulip, which is another product of theirs, attack and release times, fixed ratio, static curve derived from an iconic VCA compressor. All right, dynamic EQ, SOA button, an acronym derived from safe operating area. This is a fine tuning button to set the input level to the compressor at plus 18 dB. So it's giving us plus 18 dB of headroom, I guess, on the compressor. Pre-in input trim, one knob internal gain structure control, linking the input and output gain stages with an inverse law. So it's gain matched, which is great. Love to see that. The control sets the input from minus 24 dB to plus 24 dB and is used to adjust the plugin's internal level. Note, when the preamp stage is bypassed, the input trim mode has no effect. It is possible to increase the harmonic saturation with this input trim knob. Okay, pre-in saturation modes, we can choose between saturation or clipping, so you can push the saturation into clipping. The saturation knob, this increases the distortion of the plugin behaving differently depending on the type of processor selected. Saturation, clipper mode, amplification. Before the clipping stage, increase the input to drive the signal into the clipper. So we run through the manual. Let's look at the plugin itself. Let's see what we got here. So we'll start over in the EQ, left, right, mid, side. oversample. So we have multiple different oversamples, which is great. And it looks like we have that on each component. So you can individually set the oversampling for each component. That's pretty wild. I don't know if I've seen that on a plugin before. That's pretty interesting. Very cool. So we got our oversample, left, right, mid, side, and off on the EQ. A little bit of lag switching around, but not what it usually is. We have high pass and low pass filters. There was no mention in the manual what the slope is on the high pass and low pass. I'm guessing 12 dBs probably. We have our EQ. Oh, it's not fixed frequency, so we can roll in and around there, no problem. That's great. I thought it was going to be fixed frequency. That was not really appealing to me, actually. So not fixed frequency. So we can go from 3K to 14K, and it's a shelf. High mid frequency, we got 10 dBs, and we go from 700 to 17K, so that's great. And 20 to 700 on the low mid frequency, and 10 dBs again there. And low frequency shelf goes from 30 to 400, and the shelves on either end are just 6 dBs again. Not a ton of gain actually on the EQs, which is interesting, and no Qs on the mid bands, either the mid bands, all fixed bells. Our preamp section, we have our external sidechain option there, which is great. Again, oversample dynamics on and off. Okay, so we can turn the compressor on and off here. Okay, that seems a bit odd because you turn the EQ off above the EQ. Anyways, we have our pre-in, which it defaults to -18. So I think they're telling us, and this is pretty true for most of their plugins, or for all of their plugins, -18 dBFS equals 0 dBVU. And then saturation, and we can choose between off, clipper, and saturate. And then we have our output knob. Compressor, we can choose between compressor, our brick wall limiter, and our dynamic EQs. Okay, and the compressors, all your usual suspects, attack, release, this headroom knob, and we've got our schmod, which again changes the kind of the attack and release. I think more the attack characteristic of how the plugin is operating. And then we have our threshold, wet dry mix, stereo link. Very cool. I like that on compressors. Our release time, which goes from 0.08 milliseconds to 14 seconds by the looks of it. High pass frequency sidechain. And our ratio, 1.5 to 100. Gain makeup and output control on the compressor as well. So we have a gain makeup and we have an output. We have output here and output here. What was the signal path on this again? So our signal chain is input, static EQ, compressor, dynamic EQ, pre-saturation, clipper out. Okay, so if that's the signal path, why isn't it left to right like that? Why is this in the middle? Not super intuitive. If it's a fixed signal path and I can't change it, then why not make it intuitive left to right for me? Why not leave it that way? So that's all of our components. The limiters, what do we get? Threshold, wet dry, so we can blend our limiters. That's cool. And our dynamic EQ. So I'm curious how the dynamic EQ works, because what is it triggering? Like, how do we know what it's doing? Dynamic EQ used to modify the gain, compression, expansion of the dynamic EQ and the frequency of both the static and the dynamic EQ. Okay. Not overly intuitive. The dynamic EQ doesn't seem overly intuitive to me, but we'll try it out. Okay, so how are we going to test this thing out? Well, I think we're going to just try it out on some drums and work our way through the modules. And if we have enough time, maybe we'll try it on some other elements, but there's lots to try here. So I feel like we're probably just going to try it on drums. And if we get to some more things, that'll be a bonus, but lots to try here. So first thing I want to know is, does this thing null? So we'll just do a quick null test. So nulls perfectly. So in its default state, the plugin's not doing anything. I love that. That's a great feature. Okay, well let's hear the EQ. Let's get it rocking. High frequency. So immediately I can tell that there is a bit of a lag between me pushing the knob and it reacting to what I'm doing. That being said, having used a lot of Acustica EQs, it feels way faster than it usually does. Very smooth. Yeah, I wish there was more than 6 dBs a gain. I'd love to be able to push it, but I always reach for the top end on digital EQs first, because that's where you're going to really hear the quality of a digital EQ. And of course, this is emulating analog, an analog EQ, and where we run into problems in the digital domain is with frequency cramping, and that's what separates digital EQs and analog EQs. There's a cap in the digital domain, there's not a cap in the analog domain, and you're going to hear that on the top ends. So we're not oversampled at all, and this thing sounds great on the top. Like, we're right at 3K there, pulling all that up. We should be getting a lot of like harshness out of this, and you can tell that it's not harsh at all. And then I go to the bottom. Sounds really smooth, slick. Generally my favorite band on an EQ, low mid frequencies. This is pretty great though. This goes all the way down to 20 hertz. I'm kind of sad that it caps out at 700 though. That's not a lot of overlap there. Sounds pretty broad. Whatever the cue is that we've got happening here is pretty broad. I mean, it's great that the high mid frequency and the low mid frequency have a lot of overlap with the high frequency and the low frequency, but I would like them to have more overlap between each other. The fact that there's no overlap between them is kind of an odd choice to me. Sounds really nice. It sounds like analog EQ. It sounds like as you're pushing it, and we're pushing it pretty hard here. And we'll put it at 3K. That should be like right in your ear. Like a good analog EQ, it feels like it's getting sucked up a little bit as you push the EQ. Filters. Let's try the filters out. Pretty incredible that you go all the way up to 1.5K. Really pleasing sounding filters. First impressions in EQ, it sounds beautiful. Sounds really broad and very musical. Kind of hard to make anything sound bad. Very analog vibes. I wish there was more than 6 dBs and 10 dBs of gain reduction. And I wish there was more band interaction between the high mid frequency and the low mid frequency in particular. But yeah. So it is reacting quicker, but you can hear it there. It's kind of, there's a hint of lag. But boy, popping in and out, that top end is subtly not subtle. Sounds great. Okay, so let's get some EQ happening. I don't often use shells on the bottom. I'm more of a bell person on the bottom, so that would be a feature I would like to see. That being said, the shell sounds pretty nice. See, and this is where I would love it's more interaction. Like, I usually like to take a little bit of 1K out of the drums. So no output gain on my EQ, but I have it on the other two modules. And this is technically the preamp is technically my end game. So I'm guessing this is my output, but meters are great. You can see where I am really easily. Wow. Well, that sounds expensive, doesn't it? That's not even oversampled yet. Holy smokes. Yeah, let's get some compression happening. Whoa. So all the way to 14 seconds, that's pretty crazy. So you can really just use it as a leveler if you want to. Sounds great. Let's mess around with this, see if we can make it more aggressive. So you can get some distortion out of this. Some pretty analog-y sounding distortion. It's great. That's why I wish there was an auto gain on this, on compressors, on everything, so I can just get wild and not worry about blowing up my ears or blowing up speakers. So why am I getting all this level? Oh, gain makeup. Okay. So interesting to me that there's a makeup and an output. Is there a reason for that? So, not sure why there's a makeup. I'm not sure why there's a makeup gain and a output knob. Seems kind of redundant to me. And there's no explanation really, other than, yeah, you can turn it up 48 dBs if you want to. Okay, but let's try and get something a little more reasonable happening here. And see this is Acustica and UA are kind of like this with the no values, not telling me where I'm at, which is great. I understand it's a homage to how working in the analog world is, but I don't work in the analog world. I want to work in the digital world. So, and it's nice to kind of, for my own internal memory, not just be like, I think it was here, to be able to be like, oh yeah, it was at 8 or it was at 5, and I can just go, oh yeah, 5. So, especially when you don't have EB or undo or anything like that. Okay, so some moderate settings here. Sounds nice. Really classy sounding, really expensive sounding. And the compressor is based on a, yeah, I believe an SSL bus compressor. And you get a bit of that. It sounds really expensive actually for a G-Bus. G-Bus usually feels a little more gushy to me. A little bit more in the low mids. This feels pretty expensive. Okay, let's try out this SOA, this input. So is that just giving me more headroom? It's giving me less headroom. So it's allowing me to push into the compressor more. So it's, okay, so let's blow this thing up. So yeah, it's just pushing into the compressor at 18 dBs more of gain. Which I'm not sure I understand why that's there. The compressor feels really good to use. Like I feel like I'm getting a lot of reaction, far better than our traditional Acustica compressor feels. Oh, interesting. It defaults to stereo link off. Oh yeah, you can really feel it focus up. Cool. Okay, let's try out the limiter. Okay, so limiter's adding gain as I bring up the thresholds. Limiter's fun, isn't it? That sounds great. I mean, yeah, that's... okay, I wish the threshold wasn't just gain. So you can add some great aggression. That's always another thing I felt about Acustica compression is that it's always feels a little soft to me. It's kind of hard to make it feel aggressive. And this limiter is obviously a great option. Let's, oh, so we have makeup on the other side. So there's a bit of a bug here on the gain makeup. It's not just down, it's also plus 12 dB, so that's a bit of a bug. Okay, let's try out our second one. So this gives us more of the attack and release characteristics or options with the HMod adjustment, and we have attack and release adjustments here. So you can get pretty aggressive with it. Let's try it a little more subtly. That's gorgeous. Sounds great. All right, dynamic EQ. What's happening here? So this is when we get plus 24 dBs instead of the plus 12. Okay. And is it tied to my EQ? Like, how does the dynamic EQ work? We gotta go check the manual here. What's the dynamic EQ doing? Nothing about how this dynamic EQ works. Okay, so the manual really doesn't have any information on us as to how this dynamic EQ is working. So is it frequency based? It's obviously compressing. I just don't know what. Like, is it an intelligent dynamic EQ? Sure sounds nice. I don't know what it's doing. Okay, so we have some EQ and compression happening. Wow. Wow. That sounds great. Okay, so let's try our preamp out. Definitely kind of firms up a little bit, sucks up some of the bottom end, tightens everything up a little bit. Firms it up, yeah. A little bit of distortion here. Lots of headroom though. Sounds really nice. All right, let's try the, we'll leave that kind of in there a little bit. Let's try our saturation. So defaults to clipper, or first one up, clipper. Sounds sublime. So really hard to compare because there's no gain matching, no auto gain on it, which is too bad. It'd be great if there was auto gain on this. Saturation. Let's try this out. See how it goes. That sounds great. I really wish there was auto gain to do this. Definitely feels like tube saturation or tube distortion, the breakup of it. Okay, well, now I want to hear what our oversampling is going to do for us, because oversampling is really going to be our friend. So let's just go to 2 times. Yeah, you can just hear the edges coming off. Each time. It's funny, the saturation mode is more aggressive than the clipper mode. I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought it'd be the other way. So let's try the clipper out with the oversampling. We'll go back to 0. One time, sorry. 2 time. Yeah, you can just feel with the oversampling all the edges coming off and the depth and the width coming out. But I mean, even on 1 time, or it sounds great. It doesn't sound thin to me at all. I mean, yeah, this thing sounds beautiful. That clipper is very, very satisfying. Wow. Okay. So what I've done, left to right here, we have 1 times oversampled, 2 times oversampled, 4 times oversampled, 8 times oversampled, all on the same settings. So we're just going to bounce through them and see how it does. So 1 times. Two times. 4 times. 8 times. Back to 1. I mean, 1 sounds great too, but every step there, you can hear the depth, increasing the width, increasing top to bottom. It just feels more pleasant, easier on the ear. Just pay attention to the snare when I go from 1 to 8. Just listen to the snare. So we're on 1. And even the kick too, just incredible, the kind of the separation I feel like we're getting in them now. I mean, 1 sounds great, one sounds phenomenal to me, but wow. Okay, so the oversample sounds great. And we're running 4 instances here. 1 on 1 times, 1 on 2 times, one on 4 times and one on 8, and we're using them 60% of my CPU. So considering we're running something at 8 times, and you can, I mean, I've never seen that before. The oversample thing is really cool. The fact that you can, the oversamples feature is really cool. The fact that you can like just pick certain elements to get oversampled and not other elements. Very interesting. Lots of flexibility. Well, yeah, I think it's time to recap. This thing sounds really, really great. Very impressive sounding plugin. A lot of fun to play with. Kind of a hybrid channel strip based on some of their favorite modules. So we've kind of got an SSL inspired EQ, SSL inspired compressor. We have some tube saturation and clipping, preamp, and we have some brick wall limiters, which sound really great. So this thing backs a lot into a channel strip, and it sounds great. It sounds really, really stunning. We tried it all out really quickly, and sonically I have 0 complaints. It sounds like really great analog equipment to me in the box. And this is on their new Hyper Engine, and the Hyper Engine is supposed to improve performance both from a CPU standpoint and I think from a handling standpoint, and I think they've accomplished both of those things here. Definitely saw a real reduction in CPU usage compared to what I normally see from Acustica audio. That's really impressive, and definitely the handling of the plugins has improved the read and response. There's less input lag. There's still a bit of lag, but overall really, really greatly improved. So the Hyper Engine seems to be pretty great. Really fun to use, really, really slick, and sounds really classy, really musical, expensive, modern. It's kind of got like this modern vibe to it. I don't really get like this vintage vibe from it at all. It feels like a really modern channel strip to me. And yeah, I love channel strips. I love the workflow of channel strips. We did a quick mix, which isn't going to be in the review, but it'll be, I'll post that as a separate video. So if you're catching this on YouTube, keep a lookout for that. I just did a quick mix, very quick, maybe 10 minutes with it, and tried out the different oversamples. Really unique that you can oversample each individual component. You can oversample the EQ or the preamp section or the compressor section. That's really interesting to me. Things I would like to see, there'd be a lot of things that I'd like to see. Some of it is just personal preference, and some of it is actually would be some really great functional upgrades. Gain matching, auto gain, particularly on the saturation, on the clipper and the saturation, would be incredible. If you're playing with this and you decide to crank a knob, watch your ears, because this thing will take your head off real quick if you just push it, and it doesn't take much. I also think mix on the saturation and the clipper would be a really great upgrade, because I would love to just like blow it up and then dial it back a little bit. Auto gain on the compressor would also be great. And I don't really understand why there's a makeup gain and an output knob for that. It seems a bit redundant, and there doesn't seem to be any information in the manual about why that is. Oh, and also the gain matching for sure on the limiters. The limiters do the same thing. The minute you turn the knob, it's just the minute you turn the threshold, you're just getting gain, and it takes your head off really quickly. So I think auto gain would really be a big feature. Other things on my notes here that I made, the GUI, it looks great. It's massive. I wish it was a little bit smaller. And I also found I didn't find this on the EQ, but on the compressor, I didn't find the workflow intuitive on the compressor. I kind of wish threshold was like attack release threshold ratio. I kind of feel like those should be the top 4 knobs rather than the threshold and the ratio being down here. That's really preference as workflow, but I did feel I got a little bit lost on the compressor from an intuitive standpoint. The signal path and the layout of the plugin, this kind of also goes into the GUI. If the signal path is fixed, which it is on this thing, so it's EQ compression and then the preamp and saturation section, I think it should be left to right. I just kind of, in my head, it's weird that I'm jumping back to this master section. I guess it's kind of like maybe a console setup or a mentality from console workflow. Not the end of the world. It didn't feel like it threw me at all. But the EQ, I'd love more than 6 dBs on the shelves, and I'd love more than 10 dBs again on the mid bands. The EQ sounds stunning, and I'd like to push a little harder, get a little more aggressive with it. What are the things? Oh, the dynamic EQ. I didn't really understand what that was doing and how that was operating. And there's not any information really in the manual that I could find. And maybe I missed it, but the dynamic EQ didn't instantly speak to me. I don't understand. Yeah, overall, this thing sounds incredible. And the new Hyper engine is definitely delivering on what they're saying. The CPU usage is way down. And the overall functionality and reactivity of the plugins is way up. Like the handling is way better. So really enjoy it. And yeah, this thing sounds incredible. It's great. It's a real treat to hear. Acustica stuff always sounds great. And it seems like they're really moving in the direction of getting more functional and more viable to use a lot of their plugins. I highly recommend checking it out. Let me know what you think. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. If you're catching this on YouTube and you're enjoying the content, please hit me up with a subscription. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think of the plugin if you try it out. Thanks for tuning in. Definitely a bit of a longer one. I appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you.